So we were driving around doing errands a lot today, and why is it only hair salons that have joke names?
Yeah, there are no other businesses that use jokey names, like hair today, gone tomorrow. Like, and that's horrible too, because like, don't you want to keep your hair?
You want to keep your hair. Sheer class.
Right. How many sheer whatevers are there?
I know, there's so many
sheer
of those.
This,
or sometimes they're not even good puns. Sometimes they're like, they just put hair into it, like where the wild things are, and they call it like where the wild things hair. Like, you're like, that's not even a pun. Like, why did you... But like, why do hair salons feel the need to be funny?
Yeah, like you're going to drive by a hair salon and be like, oh, that really made me laugh.
That's hilarious.
That's really funny. I want to go get my hair cut there.
Yeah, I want them to be responsible for my whole way that I walk around in the world. Although you notice the other one is pet supply places.
Although we drove by a place called Pet Supplies Plus.
That's probably exactly what was on my mind.
Yeah.
Which, see, that's a good name.
And then we were like, pet supplies. Obviously, okay, so they sell pet supplies. Then I was like, what's the plus?
What's the plus?
Yarn?
Yarn.
Gelato?
My guess was cosmetic dentistry.
Pet supplies and my cosmetic dentistry. My guess was it's a rotating feature. So you come in every week and it's pet supplies and it's frozen yogurt this week. Pet supplies and tobacco products. Pet supplies and cosmetic dentistry.
I think that would be more fun. Yeah, right? Like, oh my gosh.
I gotta go back to that pet supply place and see what the plus is this week.
Yeah, exactly. I just came in here for dog food. Looks like I'm leaving with a T-Rex costume.
I'm gonna go there.
Yeah.
The best pun-based... Oh, coffee shops do it. Coffee shops. Okay,
every
to be
single
fair, coffee shop. Right.
Yeah,
Not every single one, but most of them. But I came up with that one when we were in Glenwood Springs.
Dude, that's
camping.
still...
So we're like, you're like, what would a name be for a combined coffee shop and gun shop?
Yeah.
It could be because we're driving around rural Colorado.
That's exactly why. We're driving around rural Colorado, and I think we saw a sign or something in like a coffee shop window where they were like, you can bring your guns in here or something. But we were talking about combination coffee shop, gun store.
Stand your grounds.
There you go.
Feel free to use it.
I think of that once every 6 months or so and just start laughing out of nowhere. Stand your grounds. It's so good.
We do have some music things to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not just trying out bits.
Another thing, we were driving around and we were looking up songs.
Looking at charts. Like let's look at the Billboard Top 100.
Yeah.
And 2002, this is the Billboard end of the year Top 100, all genres on Billboard. And someone I'm very lucky to be friends with, John Kurtzweg, had 2 spots. Well, records he produced.
Oh,
no, he did have 3.
Yeah.
He had like number 10 was a record, was a song he produced.
Puddle of Mud,
Blurry.
Right, yeah.
Number 20 was him. I mean, but... To be number 10, top 10 year end, to have a song. John Kurtzweg is a great musician and record producer and someone I've been lucky enough to know for a really long time and work with. And you just forget sometimes how big some of the stuff he did was.
Creed,
Puddle of Mud. He did a Jewel record.
Third Eye Blind?
No, but he did do a Big Ted Todd and the Monsters record.
Did he? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Eagle Eye Cherry, I think.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, right.
Third Eye Blind, Eagle Eye Cherry.
Sure.
Something with I in it. Yeah.
Something with I in it.
So he was kind of one of your mentors.
Really, I was lucky enough to, I started recording. I think my first recording session was, I was 14 or 15. I think I was 15. We put an EP out when I was 15, I think. And I was lucky enough that just kind of the only recording studio in town, John Kurtzweg was the engineer. And of course he was going to go on to do those really huge things. At the time, he was just a hardworking engineer and musician. And yeah, I was really lucky to sort of like learn a lot of recording. And
you were just telling me tonight about how he's one of the people in your life who showed you the next level of what good could be.
Has continually done that.
Ah.
Like, I wouldn't say that, I mean, John, definitely a mentor, definitely a real inspiration, but, like, not someone who necessarily taught me very much. Like, in terms of, like, hey, let me show you how this works, or hey, let me show you how that works. You know, not in a mean way or anything, just never really happened. But he was someone who continually, over and over again, has shown me how good you can be at something. He gave me a ride home from a studio or something when I was maybe 16 or 17 or something. And he was listening to something in the car, and I was like, what are you listening to this garbage for? And he was like, oh, I got a fill-in gig on bass tonight, and I'm just listening to the tunes. And I was just like, what? You can, like, it's possible to do that?
Right.
Now it seems like so easy to be kind of like, oh, that's the 4 chord, and that's the 5 chord, and then it goes back to the 1, and not easy, but, you know, you can hear that stuff now, and just to be 16 or 17 and go, oh, I thought I was good. I was pretty sure I was awesome. And then to have somebody go, I can just listen to some stuff.
For a gig tonight.
And it blew my mind. I really need to start working. And every time, John has done that to me 10 or 20 times in my life, where just
Can you think of any others that you could
see him do? Well, I mean, maybe even, I think it might have been one of the very first sessions I did. And I had my super hot, I think it was like some arpeggio lick or something. And it was like maybe the fastest thing I could do. And it was like my big whatever. John, being the engineer, you know, hit the talk back and was like, hey, when you do that one thing and you're coming up and you're like, it goes like B, D sharp. And he like just described exactly what I played. And that was like my hottest shit lick. And he was just like, just told me what the notes were, and I knew he couldn't see me either. And I was like, and I honestly would credit some of the fact that I can sort of do the same thing now to realizing at that early age that was a possibility and an option. And being around him engineering and seeing him make choices and even having conversations with the guy where he would just make an observation about something and you're like, oh my God, you're hearing so much more than I'm hearing. And I need to start working harder because I thought I was hearing everything and I'm not. Mm-hmm. You know?
I think that's one of the biggest roles of a teacher in music is helping you learn what to listen for.
That's a great...
Your ears have to develop.
That's a great... Yeah.
You can only get as good as you can hear.
Yeah. And John is a wellspring of those kinds of things. He'll just say something about a record and you're like, oh my God, you're totally right. Like, I don't know how I didn't hear that. John may be even the one who pointed out to me, there's that thing I talk about all the time when I'm talking about timing, teaching, and talking about timing. And if you listen to Smells Like Teen Spirit, the 4 is really pushed.
Oh, yeah.
So there's like sort of a longer gap between the 4 and that next one. And the 4 is kind of
and it makes you kind of go, ooh.
And just like, I think, you know, and I think maybe he just said an offhand remark about that, and like I all of a sudden heard it. Drums don't need to be, you know,
gritted,
right, yeah. Or definitely, I was lucky enough to work for John on a few records here and there. Stuff he would tell me about drum fixing. I mean, so on recordings you fix drums. You don't always, but you can. You may go as far as cutting each individual hit on each part of the drum kit and improving the timing on all of those things. And there was one song where he was like, man, that hi-hat, the and of 2 right there, don't know what that's bothering me. And I'm like, you're crazy. Like, you're crazy. It's fine. And then he was like, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And we go back and forth and we go back and forth. He's like, just look at it. See, I don't know what it is. That one hi-hat's bothering me. It was about a millisecond off. Like, scientifically, you should not be able to hear that. And I fixed it, and he was right. It was better.
Oh, my gosh.
He was not wrong at all. I fixed it and was like, oh, I didn't
wouldn't think that would make any difference. I mean, a lot of stuff you want to be not perfectly on, but it's just like, it depends what it is.
It's not about it being perfect. It's about it being sort of where you expect it to be, or the feel thing of it.
Yes. And that reminds me of when I help you align vocals sometimes.
Right.
Because like we have different strengths when it comes to time.
We definitely do.
You can tell tempo drift like a quarter of a beat.
Yeah.
bar to bar or across a song.
Yeah.
I can tell if something is on the grid or not, and we don't both share those skills.
We
so
don't
interesting.
have
So sometimes you have me help align vocals, usually just on my own stuff, but. If you go by visuals where you're looking at the waveform and you're putting the waveform on the grid, like this word should be on the one, so I'm going to put it here. It doesn't always work.
Right.
So it might need to be forward or back, but I just listen and I'm like, oh, that one needs to go 30 milliseconds earlier. That one needs to go 20 milliseconds later. And I just know, I can hear it and feel it.
Right.
So it feels like the same kind of thing. It's not going to be 20 or 30 milliseconds, but
and sometimes it is. I mean, sometimes with drum grooves and stuff, like, the snare should be back off the beat a little bit. I think maybe, especially a lot of musicians emphasize that back of the beat thing. Like, oh, you're supposed to be back of the beat. That's in the pocket. And like, to me, that's not what in the pocket is. Like, just being behind the beat is not in and of itself a desirable thing. But there are grooves where what the groove is the kick's a little pushed forward 10, 20 milliseconds, and the snare's back 2 milliseconds, 5 milliseconds, and that's where it feels good. Sometimes you grid it perfect, and it's like, that is robotically gridded perfect, and that's where it feels good.
Yeah, it really
so it is a taste thing.
Yeah.
Which is really all producing is, at the end of the day, is having the taste. That's what being a great producer is having great taste. And just kind of going like, no, that sounds good that way, or that's whatever. But shout out to John. Like I said, someone who has just continually made me realize, like, and even when people will say like, oh, something about me being good, I'm like, no, you don't know what good is. Thank you, but you don't know what good is, because I've been around really, really good. And John is one of those dudes who just like,
it's good to stay humble.
It's just really, and like, and a great drummer, a great, great singer, great harmony singer, great guitar player, great organ player, really just a fantastic musician overall. So, and he's got stuff on YouTube if you want to check any of that out. So, didn't mean to do a whole...
Oh, he's the one who does the fun metal covers,
doesn't he? Gosh, not just metal covers.
With Muppets or something?
He has a cartoon. It's a little stuffed animal named Binky, and he does rock covers as Binky with this crazy voice, and it's John playing all the instruments, which will talk about humbling you. You listen to that and realize one guy did all those instruments. You're like, oh, I need to practice. But Binky does this high cartoony voice, and I think they took the best one down. The best one was Highway to Hell by AC/DC, because it was this cartoony voice, but it's like this. And I think it got copyright struck.
Oh man, I can't believe they wouldn't let that stay up.
I know, but there's several other ones. John Kurtzweg, Binky, definitely check it out. Yeah, well, and part of how we got onto that is I had so many recording meetings this week with clients who were looking at coming in and doing some recording, and several of them were younger. A lot of them were sort of coming in, not just like, do we want to record with you, but we have no idea how this works. How does it work? What do you do? So I had to explain it like 5 times this week, which is fine and great. And I love talking about recording with anybody. So it's, it's not like I'm like complaining about doing it, but I was telling you, I've kind of broken it down into like the 5 steps of recording, which are pre-production. That's getting ready before you record. Step 2 is the actual recording, like literally pressing play, playing the song, recording the different instruments, all that stuff. That's the recording part of it. Step 3 is editing, which can get really heavy duty. That's where people do stuff like auto-tuning and the time aligning things we were talking about. And sometimes it's really simple. Sometimes it's just cleaning up these 2 takes. We did this... We put 2 takes together, and I got to clean up that little edit. But anyway, that's the step 3. Step 4 being mixing, which mixing is when you mix all the volumes of all the things you've recorded together. Again, that could be as simple as a guitar to vocal. It could be as big as one of the songs I was mixing this week had like 80 tracks.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so sometimes there can be a lot of stuff. Cody's stuff usually winds up hitting around 60 or so.
Wow.
That's mixing. You're lining up the volumes, you're putting all the instruments at the right volume, you're sweetening the instruments, you're adding effects and stuff so that there's like a 3D soundstage. That's mixing.
You're EQing so they fit in the right
EQing,
place.
yeah, right. And the final step is mastering. The reason that you always used to master, or you still master if you're putting out an EP, which people do so many singles now, you may not be doing that. But the mastering process was, let's say you've got 5 or 10 songs and you've mixed all of them. Mastering would be where you go through and make those mixes match each other so that someone can listen all the way through the CD without having to like turn the volume down, or one song has a lot more bass than the other. You know, there's just a smooth listening experience through the whole thing. But even with singles, we master singles as well because it's a last coat of paint. It's a last coat of gloss you can put on it. And then also there are volume standards out in the world now that you want to kind of ballpark hit so that if your song is on a playlist with a Taylor Swift song, the Taylor Swift song ends, your song comes on. Ideally, it is the same volume and the same general sound so that, you know, people aren't like, oh, I got to turn my headphones up now that it moved to this song, or your song isn't ridiculously louder than everything else. Just started, you know, really early. And was lucky around to be around guys like John, which still blows my mind because I record teen bands a fair amount, and I would say I've never really had anybody be interested in at all in the process or what I'm doing, and I drove people insane being like, I am sure John had to ask me more than once to give him a little bit of room because I was just like,
what are you doing
right
now?
over
What are you
your
doing now?
shoulder,
What's
just
that
like,
knob for? What did you just do? Yeah.
And that one time Bobby Salagio turned off the computer on me.
What?
We were...
So he's in LA now, right?
Bobby's an LA guy now, but he was a Tallahassee guy, and he was John's main engineer for a number of records. And Bobby mixed a record for us. Yep. Bobby's a great guy. Super talented. But we were in a studio, and Bobby was producing a band of mine, and I had started officially recording, but I was not on Bobby's level at all. But anyway, he was, I think Bobby was EQing a kick drum, but I stood up off the couch just to like walk out of the room, like go in the next room or get something to drink. And Bobby thought I was trying to see over his head what he was doing with the EQ. Oh my gosh. And he like literally like shut the computer off, like the whole thing like, I forget what he did, but he was like, and then he just turned around and he was like, hey, what's up, man? And I was like, I just stood up to get a drink of water, like...
That's some paranoia there, man.
I was like, I really was not trying to see what you were doing, man. There was a weird period where people really were being... And Bobby, if you ever see this, dude, no, like, it's just a funny story. There was a weird period where even people you were really tight with, like... There was some secrecy. There weren't all the tutorials and stuff on YouTube.
Knowledge was a lot harder to come by.
Knowledge was a lot harder to come by, and you came by knowledge by a lot of experimenting. Like, you earned it, and you sort of made up your own knowledge. Like, you weren't going like, oh, I've seen a bunch of tutorials about how to EQ a kick drum, and I know how to do this. I know this is what you, blah, blah, blah. You really spent a lot of time figuring that out on your own. Like I told you, like, I learned all my Pro Tools shortcut keys by just sitting there and, like, hitting keys and seeing if anything changed on the screen.
What does Shift K do?
Oh, wait, it did something. What did it do? What did it do? And that's how I look. You know, I mean, that's what it was like. There just wasn't all that information. You know, people made fun of me about that for, like, a long time after that. Because Bobby, like, totally... I forget what he did, but he just, like, shut it down.
Did that not ruin the session?
It may have, but I don't think he cared.
Oh, my gosh.
And he just, like, turned around in the chair and he's like, yeah, so what's up, man? It's really funny.
And then 20 years later, he mixes our album.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Remotely, though.
Yeah, Bobby's great, and Bobby actually taught me tons of things over the years. Mm-hmm. It's not at all that, and he's also a great painter, and like
that's
he's
right. Yeah. I've seen his stuff on Instagram.
Yeah, he's really good, and he's in LA now, and he's worked for, the list of names is pretty crazy. He does a lot of movie, mixing movie trailers, from what I understand.
Oh, cool.
Tell your story though about.
Oh, but my first experience in recording. So, as y'all probably know, I got a late start in music. I had a previous career. So my first band, I was a backup singer in an Afro-pop band. My second band was a wedding band, started with my vocal coach at the time.
Right.
And the third band was a jazz band.
Yeah.
So it was a quartet. It was Julie Royster on bass, Carmen Sandim on keys, Shelley on drums.
Shelley.
Yeah. So all female jazz band.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. I had no idea what recording was like. I was just like, I don't even know. There was just no one to ask. I had a vocal coach to ask, but I don't know that she'd even recorded anything. I'm pretty sure she hadn't.
Right.
The one I'm thinking about, somebody else that I worked with had. But I was like, this is a big black hole of no information at all about like, how much does it cost? What is the experience like? What does a studio look like? It's so weird to me now that it doesn't seem like it's that complicated. Like there's not stuff to know.
No.
But until you know it.
You don't, but anyway,
Immersive Studios in Boulder doesn't exist anymore as far as I hear, but they were one of the top studios around at the time. And they were having
a big facility.
Yeah. There was a big, beautiful room.
Right.
I was in the vocal booth, and the other 3 or 4 were in the main room, and we tracked live, everything live. They just had like a day price, so I bought 1 day.
Right.
And we recorded 5 tunes. And then I went and did some vocal overdubs later because I really didn't know how to sing at the time. I kept trying. I didn't really know good technique at that time. But the 3 or 4 of them, they're pro musicians, and they were pro musicians back then. Carmen teaches keys at someplace in Denver.
Yeah.
I can't remember which school, but
right.
And she worked with Ron Miles. These are top jazz people,
and Shelley.
And Amy. Like the fact that they played with me, I'm floored, and I'm really grateful. Really grateful that they spent their time with me.
Yeah.
This is a great example of like leveling up because you are around people who are so much better than you are.
That is so important, and you're right, that is sometimes one of the best reasons to take lessons is just to sort of be around someone who, Yeah. But that, I think, is one of the reasons you're a great teacher is you still remember not knowing how to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you were better than you remember, but...
I went back and I found those tracks a few years ago.
Right.
Because I never printed CDs, but, I had MP3s. And... The instruments were all good.
I really think that you should always feel that way. Like the whole true. Like you every 5 years ago you should be able to look back and be like, oh my God, I had no idea what I was doing 5 years ago. Yeah. And I know that's happened to me over and over again, where if I look back on myself 5 years ago, I feel like 5 years ago, I had no idea what I was doing. But it's just because I know more than I did 5 years ago. Yeah, that's true. Okay, that makes me feel better about it, honestly. Really? At the time when I reviewed it, 5 years ago, I was thinking to myself, I had no business spending money on recording that stuff. But you should feel that way, and it's a story. Well. I probably have the people who are listening to this have heard me tell, because I tell it all the time. But like, I very literally have talked to famous people and mentioned records of theirs that I liked, and almost all the time they're like, "Oh no, dude, that's terrible. I can't even listen to that." I'd give anything to go back and be able to redo some of that stuff or whatever. And it's because they're way better now. Yeah. And you're like, "But dude, that record sold like 5 million records." Like, how are you embarrassed about? And they're like, oh, I hate that, but you sort of should feel that way.
Yeah.
Like you really should. Like if you don't, you're not.
We need to release some more music. It's
really
not going to
should.
happen this month or next month, obviously.
Right.
But maybe I need to talk to Kristen to get on your calendar.
Yeah, you should. That's what anybody should do.
Because otherwise, we're not going to make music.
Yeah, we really should.
So I had rehearsal with Pamela Makala this week.
Oh, great.
And it's been it's probably been 6 or 8 months since we've played together or did that gig. It was snowy last time we got together to rehearse.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was last snow
late
season.
Spring, yeah.
And I felt different. I was telling you, I mean, the songs are not, they're not fast, so they're not hard in the sense that they are technically difficult, from a dexterity perspective.
Yeah.
But they're jazzy.
Right.
So, some of the chords are a little unexpected here and there. And I didn't have time to review all of the songs before the rehearsal. But I played some of them from memory, not having touched them in 6 months. And I played decent, especially even on the ones I hadn't touched. And the ones that I had reviewed, my brain was so relaxed. I was there was just more space. I've talked before about how there's a lot going on up there. So I feel in the last 6 months, even though maybe I can't tell from a dexterity perspective or a tone perspective,
right,
there's been some bass progress going on in my head.
Yeah.
I felt like more of a bass player at this rehearsal than I did at the last one.
And that is not surprising. I mean, you work at it. And
yeah.
And as we always are shocked every time on this podcast.
Oh my gosh, I practiced and I got better.
Who knew? Who knew?
I don't understand how that just seems to go hand in hand all the time.
I know. I mean, I'm sure they're unrelated, but that it...
Is it causation?
That it randomly happens.
Or is it correlation?
Yeah.
It just always seems to happen around the same time.
Yeah, I know. It's just weird that it always works out that way. It's almost suspicious. Mm-hmm. And, we talked about you. One thing you said that I remember in particular is that you were starting to be able to, you've got a great ear and a great ear for pitch.
Oh, yeah.
And you were starting to correlate having that ear for pitch and knowing where to put your fingers to get that without a ton of...
Without thinking. Yeah.
Right.
Instead of thinking, oh, shoot, what is the next chord? Or what's the next visual pattern that I play here? I was just I know how this song goes in my head. I'm going to just let my fingers move, and I'm not going to second guess myself.
Right.
And I wasn't always right, but I was right most of the time.
Yeah.
And that was new, because I can certainly do that on piano, picking out melodies, because I've been doing that since 2nd grade.
No, and you're stunning at that. It's really fast.
I don't have to think about that, but
right.
But I haven't been doing that on bass my whole life.
Right. And
that's
and when those do line up, you're really going to see that's going to be an explosion for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, something to look forward to.
Yeah.
So, last thing.
Oh yeah.
Yesterday, was it only yesterday?
I think it was yesterday.
Yeah, you went up to Loveland.
I did. So we've mentioned new locations for Performance High, and I went up to see this project under development in Loveland. It's right in the downtown, right smack in the middle of downtown. It's an old Elks Lodge.
Which is a really cute downtown.
Oh, it's so
Loveland,
cute.
Colorado.
There's all these old buildings.
Yeah. And we'll be there at the Rialto in just a couple weeks.
That's right.
Yeah, we have the Rialto show.
Gosh, that's coming up soon.
Yeah.
So this old Elks Club Lodge, it's 4 floors. So there's a basement, a main floor, an upper floor, and then a top floor. A guy named Michael Pelfrey he's in construction and development, and he is redeveloping this building. He's renovating the building. He's not rebuilding the building. He's going to retain a lot of the historical stuff. He's uncovering a lot of the historical elements that have been boarded up, or
mosaics.
There's a mosaic floor. So anyway, the bottom of this place is going to be a speakeasy and probably a coffee shop and maybe some rehearsal rooms. The main floor is this huge ballroom that's going to be a venue, as well as a couple of other spots that could be retail for musicians. And then the next floor up, I can't remember exactly the plan between the top 2 floors, but there's just a lot of rooms there. And
Right.
his vision for it is to create a music community in Loveland that doesn't yet have a place to be. So it's very musician centric. Like, he wants to foster the music community and help musicians make money, bring more money into the music industry. Like, he's like, there's music to be made there's money to be made in the music industry, but it seems like everybody's always kind of like trying to fight to figure out how to do it.
Right.
So his vision is to have great music there many nights per week and never a cover, so that people can just constantly, they know that they can go downtown and drop in and see what's up, hang out.
And
there's going to be a
good.
nice restaurant on the main floor too. I
That's
forgot
right.
to tell you about that.
Yeah, right.
Oh, a food court for cheap eats and a top-notch restaurant for like a nice going out experience. Like, this is going to be the social hub
of
Loveland.
downtown Loveland. Yeah. I mean, of Loveland. Yeah. There's not much to Loveland. But like,
Which means it's going to be easy for him to build something that is really a central place for musicians.
yeah, and don't get me wrong,
music.
it's a lovely downtown.
You know, I think Performance High fits right into that with our artist development and our music lessons, and you know, he wants resources for musicians and just a music community, people hanging out there and getting to know each other and mixing and matching and doing open mics and the community being involved. And he seems like he really knows what he's doing. So I think that's going to end up being our Loveland home.
I think that's going to be great, and yet another location.
Yeah.
And he's really right. That's a smart thing. I mean, that's one of the things that I talked about, the scene that I came out of. There was one place where bands played, and there was another place kind of in the same shopping center or whatever, building really, that was owned by the same person that owned the music venue. And at that bar, musicians drank for free or mostly for free.
Right, he's going to have deals for musicians at the
You were
bar.
also expected to show up regularly, and you would get a talking to if you weren't dropping in enough. So that there was the music venue, and then there was the bar that was attached to it, and that was full of 30, 40, 50 of the musicians in town. And so people knew that was like a scene. Like, if you went there, you were going to like see all the people you'd also seen playing shows at the other place.
Yeah.
And it just really made it this kind of scene, and it made it this kind of thing that people would go to that music venue, and they had a cover, but it was never big. It's not like covers we have now. You know, it was like $10 would have been a big deal. But people would go and just pay the cover, and like, didn't really matter who was playing, or you didn't even need to know who was playing. You just went because it'll probably be something cool.
And the scene is happening
there. And the scene is happening there. That's
Yeah.
where you want to be. So if you're into it, that's where the scene is. And that club owner was super smart. And he really would give you a hard time and be like, I would get a hard time all the time because I was...
You were out playing shows all the time.
And I was less of the hangout, you know, but I'd get the talking to about like... Where you been, man? I haven't seen you in a few nights. You need to be, you know, bartender said that you're not coming around, blah, blah, blah. You know, you get to talking to about, like, you need to come in. So sometimes I would literally, like, take a break around midnight recording and go up there and put in a show.
Oh, my gosh.
Put in a showing and then come back home and start working again.
Well, you know, you got to show up to network. That's how scenes work.
Yeah, that totally is. And there was someone providing an incentive, but more importantly, like Michael is providing a place.
Yeah.
Who knows the dividends that's gonna
Oh my gosh.
foster.
Yeah.
You know,
It's pretty exciting.
And I mean, just also another Performance High location, and I think Kristen Page is up that way now.
Right.
And,
she's moved to Fort Collins.
And
that building, there's a lot of work to be done, but this is what he does.
Right.
For a living.
It sounded like.
And it sounds like it'll go in phases. I mean, he thinks that the entire project is going to be done in about a year.
Right.
But parts of it, like the building is already in use. There was a band rehearsing when we were there yesterday. I mean, like there's no ceiling in the main lobby. There's wires hanging down everywhere. There's walls exposed. But there was room for a band to rehearse. So you could hear them all the way up and down the elevator shaft in the whole building. But he sounds really open to being flexible with whoever is involved in making this happen.
Right.
So I need to email him and stay in touch. Anyway.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, he's going to open the whole thing. The whole thing should be finished about a year, although it depends on permitting. But parts of it maybe are ready as early as 3 months from now.
Yeah.
So
man, that puts Loveland in a position of really becoming a cool magnet place, because they've got the Rialto Theater, which we've talked about.
Yeah.
We love the Rialto. Thrilled to be back at the end of the month. And, so they've got that killer theater. It's a community owned. I don't know who owns it, but they,
Oh, that's right. There were volunteers working our own little bar last time we were there.
There were. Yeah.
Right.
And it's focused around providing entertainment for the community, not just making money. Loveland is really going to become, that could really put them on the map to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a cool thing. And it's such a cool thing that Performance High just is on a tear, and
Dude, I wrote down that vision that did I mention it on the podcast last week?
I can't remember if we
I don't remember if I did, but I kind of had like a vision of what Performance High could be in 5 years. Don't know if I've shared it, but I'm not going to go into it right now. But one of the I did a brain dump afterwards, and one of the sentences I wrote down was something about how our reputation for how we treat musicians spreads to a degree that the right people who want to teach for us come to us. Right? I don't have to go out and find people. Like, the right people come to us. Well, someone who I've known for a very long time and who has toured the country as a musician contacted me a couple of hours ago asking if she could teach at Performance High. Between Kristen Page and I, if we could accidentally blow up the world, like we manifest, like we just say like, this should happen, and then like the next day that happens.
I have told you that for years. That has been true of you you'll think of something.
And I hate the whole manifest
it's not real, but like,
but it sure seems to happen.
It works. It's sort of like that practicing and getting better thing. Of course, they're not connected, but they sure do follow each other. But no, you're amazing. You have a vision, and stuff just starts happening. It's pretty...
Watch out.
Yeah, I know. It's gonna be...
Don't cross me. No, I don't have those kinds of visions.
You started this whole thing by saying you wanted to have people come to you because of how well you treat people, and then you ended it with "Don't cross me." It was a bit of a mixed message there.
Do you know what I mean? I don't use my powers for evil.
I'm just giving you a Hey, fun day, by the way.
Yeah. We spent all day together.
Yeah, so that was great. Cool. We don't get to do that often. Thank you guys. If you made it all this way, start looking for hobbies or something. I don't know. I mean...
What are you doing?
Take a good look in the mirror.
I mean, we are having fun, but...
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, we're at 43 minutes.
Are we really? Oh,
if you made it this far,
Good for you. Thank you for your dedication.
This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, because you need help.
Who is this podcast sponsored by? This podcast is sponsored by Performance High Voice and Music Studio and Lakeside Pho, 44th and Sheridan.
44th and Sheridan.
Affordable, huge portions, really good.
Super huge, and just a cool little counter place. You put your order in the counter. Yeah, it was great. So if you get a chance, the good people at Lakeside Pho.
They're really friendly too. Yeah,
they are. And we appreciate their sponsorship of this podcast. We hope they find out that they're sponsors at some point.
All right. See you guys later.
Seriously, get help.